Philosophical Sundries, fully immersive VR, and Techno-Mages. So first, virtual telekinesis. So this seems like the stuff of fantasy, the stuff of science fiction, but it's possible we might be heading in that direction in sort of a real sense. Uh, Currently, there are people with brain implants like Neuralink that can move a cursor on a computer screen. They could click and interact with desktop icons. They could play video games. They could type, long as much as they want. They could type paragraphs, books they really wanted to, and they could do this just by thinking. So that's pretty impressive. So we're actually there now. This is where we are. People could actually do, especially in Neuralink in particular, people could actually do this just by thinking. Um, Theoretically, there seems to be no reason why a similar interactive mechanism could not be turned inward and have the same impact in a fully immersive VR environment, a virtual reality environment. Um, so we could definitely do it from the brain with the brain implant. We could definitely do it from the brain to a computer screen, a computer monitor, wirelessly. Just doesn't have to be connected or anything. It's a wireless connection, at least for Neuralink, with the brain, the sort of brain implant, um, direct connection from the brain to the computer screen, wireless. Um, if we could do this with a computer screen and interact with a computer, there's no reason why we couldn't do something very similar, even in a fully immersive VR environment. And that's sort of what I'm going to be looking at right now. Um, and this is where it kind of gets interesting and fun. Um, a person with the right implant, maybe it needs to be a little bit more advanced from what we currently have, but eventually we'll get there. A person with the right implant, with the right brain implant, in a compatible VR environment or program, should be able, in principle, to move simple virtual objects around, like virtual rocks, spoons, beer bottles, trash cans, etc. You name it. Just by thinking, they can move these things around. Um, they should be able, within the virtual environment, they should be able to move around simple objects just by thinking. So they're in a virtual environment. They want to move a beer bottle. They could just, through their mind, through just thinking, they could pick the beer bottle up and they could throw the beer bottle. Um, if this is the case, if this is possible, which it seems, at least for basic, very simple virtual objects, it seems to be very likely that we could do this. If this is the case, virtual telekinesis seems possible within that VR environment. So how did we get here? So obviously, just the basic telekinesis in the virtual sense. How do we get there? Well, it's a pretty simple research program that we could follow to get where we need to be. To sort of get this sort of virtual telekinesis. So the first step would be for us to demonstrate that a person with a brain implant can move simple digital objects around on a computer screen simply by thinking. To just, on the computer screen, move digital objects around. And we already, pretty much at this point, we already have demonstrated this. We could already do this. This has already been demonstrated, that a brain implant can move around objects on a computer screen just by thinking. We've already demonstrated this. So that's the first step. We're already there. The second step, we haven't really hit this point just yet, but I think it's coming within, probably very soon, within the near future. So step 2, demonstrate that a person with a brain implant can move simple virtual objects around in a basic non-immersive VR environment by thinking. So non-immersive, just really basic VR environment. This seems very, very doable. I don't see why this would be a problem based on the current trajectory of the technology. So if you could move objects or digital objects around a computer screen, why couldn't you just move basic virtual objects around in a sort of non-immersive, really simple VR environment. So we're not there just yet, but I think that's definitely within reach very soon, I think. 3, this is where it gets a little bit harder. Demonstrate that a person with a brain implant can move simple virtual objects around in an immersive VR environment by thinking. This is a lot harder to do. Definitely requires more skill to pull this off. But if we could do step 2, there's no reason. I mean, I don't think it's not a great leap to be able to do step 3. It just might just be a little bit more complicated. But I think if we could do 2, we could do 3. Final step in terms of virtual telekinesis. Demonstrate that a person with a brain implant can move simple virtual objects around in a fully immersive VR environment by thinking. So fully immersive, like they're fully immersed in the VR environment, and they could, for the most part, they can move things around, simple objects around just by thinking. If they want to will or think that a rock flies across the street, they could do that. They could just pick up the rock with their mind and throw the rock. Of course, this is more complicated. It requires a lot more skill to do this, a lot more training to do this. But I think, again, if we could do step 3, we could probably do step 4. So that's the research program. Once we complete the research program, if we could demonstrate step 4, I think in the functional sense, we will have virtual telekinesis, which is pretty exciting. It's pretty cool just to have that, whether it's useful or not. The next thing, Techno-Mages. So if step 4 of the research program is possible, I think it is. It might not be, but I think step 4 of the research program is indeed possible. If step 4 of the research program is possible, presumably those people with brain implants, the most sophisticated brain implants, whoever has the best brain implants, those with brain implants that were most in sync or aligned with computers, so that are most sort of connected to computers in a very easy, no sort of interruption sense. To those that were most in sync or aligned with computers with enough practice and skill, of course it's going to require some practice and probably some skill as well, with enough practice and skill could develop exceptional virtual abilities. So those people with the best brain implants, who've practiced the most, who have the most skill at utilizing this sort of these implants in a flawless way in a virtual environment, an immersive virtual environment, they could develop exceptional virtual abilities. Compared to people without implants, without brain implants, and compared to people without the same amount of practice and skill. So these types of people could develop exceptional virtual abilities. We might call these people Techno-Mages. There's no reason why we wouldn't think of them as, in the virtual world, as a type of mage, a Techno-Mage. And this is where it gets really interesting. In principle, Techno-Mages could eventually develop powers, sort of in the loose sense powers, virtual powers, exceeding basic telekinesis. I mean, telekinesis is cool enough in itself, but there's no reason why we need to be limited to telekinesis or virtual telekinesis. Techno-Mages, in theory, should be able to delete virtual objects, alter virtual objects, bring virtual objects into existence, and manipulate their own avatar presence simply by thinking. And this goes far beyond telekinesis. This is, a whole nother set of exceptional abilities. And there's no reason why somebody with the right brain implant wouldn't be able to do this, because you could do it in the basic sense with a computer. If you have an implant at the first step of the research program and you're moving an icon around on the computer screen, you could easily also click on the icon, delete that icon as well, just by thinking. So in the fully immersive environment, you should also be able to do something very similar. Delete virtual objects, alter virtual objects, bring them into existence, manipulate your own avatar by thinking, maybe fly or something like that. If you had the right skill set, if you could manipulate your own avatar by thinking. And I think this is the beginning of magic in the virtual sense. Or it mimics magic, I think. Telekinesis, bringing sort of destroying things with your mind, bringing things to existence, manipulating things, objects. This is what in fantasy, this is what the wizards would do. The wizards and the mages would do in fantasy that we talk about. And they would do this in the real world. Except the Techno-Mages would be doing something very similar, but instead of the real world, they'd be doing it in the virtual world. So for all intents and purposes, they are mages in this virtual world, and that's pretty exciting. If they were able to do something very similar in the real world, we would call it magic. This new technology, as it advances, as it becomes more sophisticated, brain implants might be able to create something like virtual magic. And people that were very skilled at doing this, at the skill of interacting, manipulating virtual objects, altering virtual objects, controlling virtual objects with their mind just by thinking, those that are really exceptionally good at doing this would be something like mages. They would be something like in the sort of the sense that we normally would talk about mages outside of technology. Really cool. I think it's exciting. And once we start seeing this, even basis telekinesis, when we can see this, I think it'll be really, really, really exciting to see. And it will make fully immersive virtual reality, when we finally get there, it'll make it a lot more fun if you actually had powers in the virtual world, rather than just like walking around and sort of, treating objects as permanent. Objects instead in the virtual world could be manipulated. You could have the power to manipulate objects or even the world itself in this sort of fully immersive virtual environment. So really cool, worth thinking about, and it's coming. Might not be in the near future, but it's definitely at some point we will eventually complete the 4 steps of the research program if it's possible. All right, until next time.